Last week on the show, we explored the KPMG Africa CEO Outlook, delving into perspectives, challenges, and opportunities facing top execs on the continent. Today, we are privileged to bring that conversation to life by hearing directly from one such remarkable CEO, an iconic leader whose journey embodies the resilience, innovation, and foresight that defines African enterprise. It is my distinct honor to introduce Mrs. Adenike Ogunlesi, the founder, chief responsibility officer, and creative director of Gatimo Limited. Under her leadership, the firm has become a powerhouse in garment manufacturing, fueling not only its renowned sub-brand, Ruffle and Tumble, but also serving other distinguished brands across industry. For over 2 decades, she's redefined the landscape of retail and garment production in Nigeria. She has built a brand that blends creativity with quality, winning the hearts of families across the country. At the same time, her work exemplifies a commitment to empowering local value chains, fostering sustainability, and providing and proving that African manufacturing can compete on a global scale. So delighted to have you on the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
When I was thinking about this conversation, many of us have known the household brand name, but then I saw your title, Gatimo, and I was thinking, she's done backward integration. She's gone down into the value chain where she's not only retailing, but she's manufacturing and producing. So can you tell us a bit about how that journey has been? You've been in this business since the early 90s or thereabouts?
Earlier than that.
Earlier than that?
Yes.
Yeah, so it goes way back.
So it goes back to 1998. So
okay.
Just a little bit early 90s, let me say. And it's actually quite interesting that I was at a crossroads and wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And the question I asked was, I have 3 small children. Where can I go and buy clothes for my 3 small children? And there were very limited options. There was also a very fragmented industry. There were no standards. There were no, the quality of the offering, the selection of products wasn't very interesting or exciting. And I didn't want to dress my children up in a very formal way. I wanted to mix and match colors. Colors are my strength. I like to play with colors. And finding those things easily was very difficult. And I already had a background in manufacturing, in garment manufacturing, but working more on the couture end, made to measure, and that had its huge opportunities, but it had its challenges as well. And the challenges were mostly between fittings, women's bust, waist, and hips would change. And of course, it then becomes your fault. You didn't do something right. And I was just tired of that, even though it was still ready to wear at the time. I've always wanted to focus on ready to wear. So I just moved then into, can't find pajamas for my children. You know what, I'm just gonna make some. I'm gonna put them in my car. When I take my kids to school, I'm gonna ask parents, do you want to buy pajamas? And that was how
it grew.
Yeah, that's how the whole business started.
You were starting, when you started your business, I think I recall those were, let's say, the early 90s. I was in high school at the time, and I remember Nigeria was in a particular economic climate, and maybe even a political climate, and we've been through several economic cycles. So from when you started till now, and we'll talk about the journey in between, what for you has been the biggest economic shift that you've seen that has potentially impacted your business?
People now are more willing and are ready to accept brand made in Nigeria.
Okay.
So if you go out now to a party, 75% of the people that are dressed in something that's made locally. That's a major shift. That shows you the opportunity and the potential that exists within the industry. Now, how do we structure that opportunity? How do we protect and how do we create Nigerian brands on a scale where you go into every mall in Nigeria
and you find
there are Nigerian brands?
So if you say people are more accepting of Nigerian brands, that would imply intuitively that business is better.
I would say
financially and economically.
The business has to always be better for you to sustain your business.
Sure.
So it's about how you respond. It's about being agile. It's about the way you think. It's about being a solution provider. So for example, for us, COVID hit. I've never made masks before in my entire life. I produce children's clothing or uniforms. So we have this opportunity. Are we going to let it go? No, we're not. We're going to find out how to make masks. We're going to re-engineer the entire factory to do this thing.
Absolutely.
And it was an opportunity to make 1 million masks. Never made 1 million of anything
and in
before.
fact, that's an interesting point, because I was going to ask you about what strategies you adopted to sort of build resilience, and I would argue maybe pivoting to the mask making.
Being agile.
Being agile.
And honestly, it's the agility of mind, being flexible. Nigeria will throw you curveballs at every point in time. How do you respond?
Okay.
And if you become despondent and you think, oh, there's nothing works, nothing is ever going to work, that's why I don't encourage bashing Nigeria. It's got to stop.
Okay.
Because every country has its challenges. So why don't you come with a solution mindset that says, okay, so we have this challenge. So what are the possible solutions? The possible solution for us was to re-engineer the factory and just go ahead and make those masks.
Yeah.
We weren't doing anything from the retail end. And then we started making masks. State governments were calling us and we were making masks.
Yeah, and you know, manufacturing is just one of those areas that many Nigerians, even if you're not in manufacturing, you feel that it's never really achieved its full potential because of a whole heap of infrastructure challenges. And you mentioned curveballs. We don't want to dwell on the negative. Can you tell us what some of those other curveballs were and what needs to happen in manufacturing as a whole? I mean, the textile and the garment space is just one part of that. But what are some of the big and deep-seated issues?
It's a great question, honestly. And for me, what is important is that there must be a framework with a plan that its main focus and goal is to industrialize Nigeria.
Right.
And within that framework, we have to look at what is possible for all the different industries that exist and what are their needs. So you have to look at education. How do you upgrade the quality of education in such a way that it brings out talent that is fit for purpose in all the different industries? For us, there are no retail academies.
Okay.
There's none. Apparently now Lagos Business School has something that they're doing. But we need retail academies. It's a profession. It's not a stopgap for you while you're going to university. Yes, a lot of people see it as that. But it's a profession.
That is in terms of the people who come into work in retail.
In retail, yes. You can build a whole career in retail. So we have to show what are the opportunities. But there must be a political will to industrialize Nigeria, to create industrial hubs where you can manufacture at scale, which is what China has done.
Absolutely.
So that the costs that are rising, they become lower because you now have scale. And once you have the numbers, and Nigeria has numbers, depends on what level of market you're working at. It's not only Nigeria, it's West Africa, it's global through e-commerce. So there's still many opportunities. I've never seen as many opportunities as I see in today's Nigeria. Because in every challenge, there is a possibility that you can find a solution to overcome that challenge and create something amazing.
Yeah, so if I may ask you, your value chain, is it entirely local?
No,
it's
isn't.
not.
Yes, because
so that means you have some exposure to some of the FX-related issues.
We do. And 95% of our raw materials are imported.
Okay.
Largely because available in the local market in Nigeria does not mean it is made in Nigeria.
Understood.
Yes, and we need to understand that.
But can you help us unpack that a bit?
So when you go into Balogun and you say you bought the material in Tinubu or in Balogun and it's made in Nigeria, no, it's not made in Nigeria. Even the Ankara is made in Nigeria. One of the biggest letdowns for the entire value chain is the textile industries. And I honestly don't think that we should put any more money into the textile industries. What I think we should do, what I strongly believe, because garment manufacturing offers low-hanging fruits to create job opportunities.
Absolutely.
Very quickly. And there's a population, there's a global market, there's global opportunities for garment manufacturers. We're 2 weeks away from the UK, we're 2 weeks away from America. Why are we not producing for Calvin Klein? Why are we not producing for Macy's, for all these brands?
Which is what China and India are doing, and not just high-end brands.
So we need to do that. So what can we do? Look, we can't beat the Chinese right now. We can't beat them at the raw material. Textile is a raw material for the garment industry. Not 5 yards or 6 yards. I'm talking 100-meter bales that you can put on a 30, 40-meter table.
So what you're saying that Nigeria doesn't produce the raw material inputs from some of the, and that's okay, because if it's not a competitive advantage for us, we don't necessarily have to produce every part of the value chain.
We don't need to hold the entire industry to ransom because of the textile industry.
Sure.
We can create the jobs. So allow us to bring in textile as a raw material for people people who choose to go into manufacturing. So all the uniforms that are being sold into schools in Nigeria that are made in Bangladesh, the jobs stay here. All the oil and gas uniforms, the jobs will stay here. Nobody produces fire retardant material, for example, in Nigeria.
No, I mean, you know, that's an interesting point, because as soon as people hear imports, they naturally assume that Nigeria is losing value.
No.
And it doesn't necessarily follow, but it's a lack of understanding around the nuance of the sector. So, I mean, from a policy perspective, I know we had all sorts of questions planned, but I'm trying to follow this train of thought. From a policy perspective, are you seeing the right incentives for your industry?
So, as I said earlier, there needs to be a strong political will that puts on the forefront the industrialization of Nigeria. The way the 1% are living is not sustainable without industry. We have to create jobs, and the only way to do that is to put money into industry. The only way to do that, who is going to borrow money at 30-something%? You can't compete with anybody borrowing money at 30-something%. I don't understand the thinking behind that. So why don't you give an alternative? An alternative is BOI. It's a single digit.
Bank of Industry.
Yeah, it's a single digit facility loan. But a lot of people can't scale the bureaucracy of BOI. It requires a lot. Yes, you have to put in the effort if you really want to do business and if you really want to scale. But I think it would be good to meet people from when they start. How do you help people through the stages of growth? And how do you help finance people through the different stages of growth?
Now, that's an interesting point, because I was going to ask you about your capital raise journey throughout the... I mean, it's a 20-plus year journey, so I'm sure you've seen peaks and dips.
It's an almost 30-year journey.
An almost 30-year journey, yeah, that's true. I actually thought it would be more than 25 years, almost 30-year journey. So, I mean, was it just your own capital and money you were putting in the business? Were you going to the banks? Were you... I mean, BOI has only just come to the market in the last decade plus.
So again, great question. I used to be very prudent.
Okay.
And, you know, I always divided my money into three: savings, back to work, and what I lived on. And so when I wanted to go into this business, I literally just sold everything that I owned and started rough and tumble, and then got some funding from family as well that enabled me to start. So I self-funded, But as we grew, as the banks came and started having conversations with me based on what they were seeing going through the account, the conversation changed. So if you want my account, this is what I want. I want to do this, I want to do this. Are you going to finance this for me? Okay, so you need to put this in place, put that in place, put this in place. And so we evolved. So from never borrowing money before, the first time I ever borrowed money, I borrowed 20 million. And I'm talking about
Naira,
20 million Naira, of course. 20 million Naira, I'm talking about 20 million Naira almost 20 years ago. It was a lot of money then. You know, it was a lot of money then. So now, the thing is, you need to understand that if you're going to borrow money, it requires you to have a business that you have a proof of concept, it's a going concern, it's sustainable, and you have financial discipline.
Absolutely, because, you know, there are lots of young entrepreneurs or business leaders who look at you and think, I want to do that. Now, the question in my mind is, if you go into retail and you do something like clothing, does that mean you have to really do that backward integration for it to make sense? Or is that just your own specific choice?
No, you see, so when I started, that was the only choice that was available. And I really didn't want to go into retail. I just wanted to be a manufacturer.
Right.
I'm alive in a factory where the machines are going, we're designing, we're touching fabric, we're doing all kinds of things with fabrics. That's really where my core strength is. It still is, actually. That's what I really love. But I couldn't find a retail company that would sell the clothes because they were made in Nigeria.
Right.
So everybody turned their noses up at it because it was made in Nigeria.
Right.
So I went and opened a small store by myself. And
to be your own off-taker.
Yes. So that's what happened.
But today, you're serving beyond just rough and tumble.
So today now, we've reinvested when the first devaluation happened about 2017. I brought in some consultants. What are the assets we have? How can we further sweat these assets? Madam, you have this factory. Let's go into contract manufacturing. But to do that, we need to upgrade the equipment,
Right.
so that we can make more than just children's clothing. So we can make uniforms, we can make whatever it is that the market requires within a certain range of products, not everything, but within a certain range of products. And that's what we did. Went off to China, brought in more equipment, and then started doing uniforms. So we do uniforms for Total, we do uniforms, we just did Charterhouse.
Okay, great.
The most premium school in Lagos, in Nigeria.
That's fantastic. I mean, fantastic milestones. Now, I'm thinking about labor. You talked about kind of the future of the workforce around retail and how young people are thinking of going. Given that, talent attrition is such a big thing now, and many people are jackpying, many young people, how is the labor market, not just on the retail end, but on the manufacturing end, how is that evolving, and how is technology and innovation helping you perhaps overcome some of those challenges?
Another great question. So, what we do is we advertise, bring in talent, pay for their transportation and lunch ticket, and we train.
Okay.
We were very fortunate to have been through the Export Promotion Council, to have received training from Sri Lankans that were paid for by the USAID, and they came to show us we were doing it all wrong. And it set us right.
Because they are a hub for...
Yes, and they set us right, and it has been awesome. So yes, the labor is very flighty.
Flighty.
Yes,
yeah.
flighty is the word I'm looking for. Very flighty, but also what incentives do you put in place for them? How do you treat people? A lot of people promise their tailors. For us, it's a business, so we treat it as a business. So there's insurance. There's everything that you need to give to people. We do all those things.
Yeah.
We use technology to make patterns, to upgrade patterns. We use technology. The button tacking machine we use is computerized. You throw in 10,000 buttons and you just put the shirt, it goes back. It's done. So a shirt comes out in 2 hours.
Are you actually worried about cannibalization of actual manual labor as a result of technology, or do you see it as a positive thing?
So that's what, to actually make a shirt, you have a series of 7 operators that can make a shirt, but I refuse to buy those machines.
Right.
They would have been more efficient, but they would not have employed as many people as a line would employ. So I didn't use that.
Okay.
We don't use that.
But that was your own decision as an
yes, it was my
owner.
decision
Yeah.
because for me it was about creating jobs. Creating jobs is it has become a moral obligation for anybody that owns a business or has the capacity to start a business or is willing to invest in Nigeria to create jobs. We have to create jobs. It's not a wish. It's not I wish. It's not wishful thinking.
It can't be on the sidelines. It has to be part of the core business objective.
And it has to be the main conversation where policy is concerned. What are we doing to create jobs? Yeah, and to create jobs on scale.
Absolutely.
We're letting the Chinese into Nigeria, but they're bringing a lot of their workforce. So what are we doing about that? How is that impacting our own young population? How?
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to get our people into jobs. Yes, people say they don't want to work. Yes, they don't want to work because they haven't worked for so long. So they don't have a disciplined mind. So it's going to take time to discipline, to create that discipline that you require when you have to do work.
Yeah, and I'm glad you talked about job creation and the moral imperative, because my next sort of question was going to be around ESG and sustainability. And I'd like to understand, in terms of your manufacturing value chain, beyond the sort of maybe social part of it, the environmental part of it, are there any kind of emerging trends that are influencing the way you manufacture from an environmental point of view? Do you have a net zero target, for instance?
No.
No? Okay,
No.
that was a resounding no. Why is that?
No, I don't.
You don't believe in that, or it's not pragmatic?
Does it work for us here? So what works for us here? We're not an industrialized nation. We need to become industrialized. Yeah? If you talk to me about chemical waste, if you talk to me about what do I do with all the remnants that come from cutting, first of all, we cut, the patterns are digital. So what you have left is sometimes as thin as this. But that can go into, it goes into a factory in Ikeja that uses it as rags because they use a lot of oil.
Absolutely.
So we don't even sell it to them. We just give it to them,
right?
To use. Before I used to use it to make dolls. We used to use it to make all kinds of little things. And that's the beauty of a hub. If we had a hub, what would happen is people would use the scrap to make bags,
to create
patchwork.
other things and create value.
Hair bows, we make a lot of hair bows, little purses, slippers. You see, these things look like they're nothing, but if you're shipping this out to the world, there's more than 2 billion Africans, or people of African descent, who want to identify with being African.
And who would buy it?
They will buy it.
Absolutely. You know, we're almost coming to the end of our time, but you said so much. And in fact, it's made me think I should have gone into retail and manufacturing because of the way you painted it. But I know it's not being plain sailing all those almost 30 years. It hasn't been. But looking at the overall picture for Nigeria, we recently had a new Minister of Industry, Trade, and Investment. What would you want to be saying to the key policymakers around how manufacturing, large-scale manufacturing in Nigeria should look, and the types of incentives that will sustain this industry for decades to come?
Great question.
Big messages, very briefly.
Yes, I think we've said some of those things. I would, again, political will to create a framework that sets out a course to industrialize Nigeria and see it as moral obligation, moral incentive, and it needs to have been done since yesterday. Yeah. Education. How do you upgrade the education so that the people who are the talent that's coming out is fit for purpose, can go into the industry, so we don't lose any more time trying to train people on the simplest of things. It's crazy, you know. So how do you do that? How do we develop hubs so that we can have shared resources, so that we can have economies of scale. We can bring down our costs, because when you look at the Chinese model, it's about bringing down their costs, and that's what they do.
Because they do it at scale.
Yes, they do it at scale.
And so, they have the population. We have the population.
You know who has copied that? Turkey has copied that. Turkey has now become China of Europe. Bangladesh earns $34 billion from ready-made garments that they send all over the world.
Wow.
We can do this in Nigeria. We're 2 weeks away from Europe. We're 2 weeks away from Nigeria. I would like to sit with policymakers and share a roadmap that we have developed that can make this possible.
Okay, well, I hope some of them are listening. Are you excited by anything in the tax reform bill insofar as it concerns your space? Or you're still kind of digesting it?
I am still trying to digest
Hopefully there will be something in there for retail and manufacturing. It's been so amazing speaking to you.
Thank
Loved
you.
having you here. Hopefully I'd love to invite you back, maybe in a few months, to find out how it's going, especially from the policy perspective. Thank you so much, Mrs. Adenike Ogunlesi. It's been so fantastic speaking to you. You heard it, quite a fascinating sector, retail manufacturing, textiles and garment manufacturing. Well, that's all we have time for on Business Week. This week, I'm Rolake Akigbefeleni. Let's, of course, continue the conversation on X. Do have a lovely rest of the weekend.